Hi everyone, so we're gonna go ahead and do a video on building a reflex deflex. Alright, so I'm getting my pieces together to put the boat together. So I already made a handle, glued it up, I just gotta shape it now. So my handle on this one and the next bow is just two pieces of wood, whatever wood they may want. G10 in the middle, and then I just glue them together, clamp them, and let them dry. And then it comes out like this. So this will be my blank. I always cut them a little longer than I need, but that'll be my blank for the handle. Already got my veneers. Green Mountain camo, which actually starts out like this, and then cut it with a bandsaw, send it to the drum sander to whatever thickness you need, which mine are veneers, so they're anywhere from 25 to 30 thousandths, depending on what set I'm making. But these ones are 30 thousandths, so I have those. I have my carbon fiber strips that I'll be trimming. I got 40 thousandths glass, full length, and then for the fade outs down, I'll be taping those up. Already got my bamboos tapered and then glued. I'll just clean up right here on both of them. Those are ready to go. So normally I'd use a jig that I have over there, put this in there that shows me where I need to cut and stuff. I'd trace it, cut it, and sand it with that, and then on the same side for the actual fade outs. But for this way, I'm gonna act like I don't have a jig, do my center, and I'm gonna do it the same way I would if I didn't have jigs and I was doing it just all by hand and with sanders and stuff. So let's get to it. If I don't have a jig or nothing, I always start here with my mold. We're saying you already have your mold built and you know which bow you're going with. So take my handle and square. Always start out with a square, and then make a square mark on the center of your bow. Your handle, my bad. Okay, so I got that marked. For this part, I like to use a colored pencil, just because at the moment when you're using pen and stuff, it can rub off. Not as easy, but if I make a mistake, it's easier to fix this. So, all right, I got my center there, so we know where it's gonna start. And on my molds, I just have arrows because I like to have a reference of which way I've made stuff, you know, which way the bow needs to go. So you just set this. If you're doing it, if you don't have a mold, you just set it on there and then trace out your cut. So I just got center, and then I traced it out, centered it, and of course lined it up. Trace it. Now I'm gonna go over there to the bandsaw. I'm gonna cut that out. Then I would normally use my jig, have it on there, and then switch jigs and do the fade out, but I'm gonna do it without it. So I mean, you can mark it now so you can do your cutouts all at the same time. Let me get this out of the way. So depending on the bow, your fade outs may start or above center with 2 inches or below, or you may completely pass through with the glasses, depending on your models and stuff. So this is where I'm gonna just mark this with pins so I have a good spot that doesn't move. Okay, so then, since I'm not using my jig, I'm just gonna, from the mark to the end, my fade outs on both sides, and that's what I want. I'm actually gonna use marker on this side because it's blue, and green and brown because it's Green Mountain camo, but when you do your fade outs, if you're doing it like this, you want it to be to where it gets really thin. Of course, this is going to look thick because it's a marker, but it'll thin out. But you don't want to come in steep and then out like this. You want to have a just nice, gradual fade out to them. So now we got that done, we'll hit the bandsaw with it. Alright, so now I got the handle shape, cut it out both sides, went in and sanded it. Just make sure you feather the ends as thin as you can get them. It helps. If you leave it gapped, it's going to have a gap, so get it as paper thin as you can. So these are going to go in there to my wife to get lasered, and then the bamboo's ready. It's all nice and pretty, flat, so the next thing to do is just tape these off and glue them all together. So you can always test fit this on your mold, just to make sure you're fitting in nice and tight. Just because you got a line doesn't mean it'll be perfect. Always test fit it unless you have a mold already built for the handle. Alright, take two. I'm learning. Didn't even have me on camera. You couldn't see half of what I was doing. So now that we got our blank glued up, ready to go, all I have is a center line down the middle and one in the center of the handle. So you can draw your pattern out beforehand on flat glass. It's easier if you just make a template because you can correct this when it's harder to correct this. I don't like to draw it out with pencil because as you make more and more, you see the pencil tends to have the tape roll with it, which moves, and it just makes a lot more headaches. So what I would do is I already have a mark for my center handle and one farther mark up, so the top limb will be a little longer than the actual bottom limb, so it'll be weaker and stiffer. I would just line this up and then clamp it all down, trace it with a razor. Don't try to dig in, you're just trying to scratch it so you have a mark in case your tape rolls and you move the tape, you can check everything. Well, now that we got the profile on the bow, let's cut it out. Okay, so now that we got it shaped out, we're going to use the sander and we're going to square it up, take all the marks from the bandsaw out. Alright, and through the miracle of time, we got it all sanded clean, so I'm going to mark center on both sides of the bow. Another helpful tip is to mark on here because you're about to get rid of that. I also like to mark the center of the bow just so I know. And then just connect these lines so I have a reference point because that tape's going to disappear. So Okay, I got a phone call in the middle of it, but we're gonna do, his other bow is black, so we're gonna go ahead and do red antholic, and then on the tips, we're gonna go red, yellow, red. So I'm gonna cut them out, but I already have a couple pieces already sanded. So now I'm just gonna go over here and cut it. Okay, so I like to start in the middle, and then also make sure you clean this. Okay, I like to start my overlays and tips, but I like to start on the front first. So the camera shut off, I don't know why, but tips are glued, this is glued, so these clamps I use are padded on the back to not damage the glass. These are padded on the actual clamps. Okay, so through the miracle of time, tips are on, overlays on, so we're just gonna clean them up, get them ready to start shaping. So still got our centers, we know which way is top, so everything's ready. So I'm going to start marking it for the cutout. I use a saw, some use routers, some just hand saw it. It's up to you. I pretty much know exactly where it's going to go every time, plus I measure beforehand. And it's just really a reference point to where to start. Okay, so got my basic shape cut out and then traced out on the pattern. So now I'm just going to use a bandsaw to rough it out, and then it'll be sander and stuff like that. Okay, so when working on the tips for me, I like to start on one side and work my way around so it's nice and straight. So you got your marks here, there, and on both sides. Just get it started slow. Take your time getting them. So you can cheat if you want and do it like this, so you can get it all the same every time. I like to check it with a ruler after, but that's what we're gonna do. Okay, now that I got the tips roughed out, I'm just gonna hit the sander with it, take some of this big mass off. So I got my center mark on the end too, so. Okay, so the tips are just started, worked out. All I did was round this part, well not round it, but flatten it and then flatten the sides so I can work on it with a file. So now that I got the tip roughly shaped out. Now I'm gonna start the grooves in there, and the camera's gonna be at a different angle, or I can move it actually. I don't know how good you'll be able to see it, but start on just trying to do even amount of strokes and stuff. Alright, so hopefully at the end you'll come up with something that looks similar to this. I mean, you can still final sand it and stuff like that, so I'm going to do the other side off camera.